Hello everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Annette. Hello, Brian. Hello, Elizabeth, and our participant on their Galaxy. Feel free to change your name so we can call you by name and know who you are. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have a great workshop ahead with the amazing leadership and life coach, Tara Rhodes. This is our second collaboration with her at the L.E.A.D org, and we're thrilled to have her back. I also have my pen and paper ready because you're in for a chock full workshop this evening, which will also be interactive. Later on, we're going to have some breakout rooms so that you can actually begin to formulate your strengths. And strengths are something that we all have, whether you realize it or not. Sometimes when I talk to young people as a career development practitioner who are trying to build their careers, I can see that they do have strengths and talents, but they can't see it in ourselves. So that's why we have amazing speakers joining us like Tara, who can help bring that out in us, because sometimes it's hard to read the label when you're in the jar. So today's workshop will be all about leveraging your career with your strengths, and you will learn how to identify and use your strengths to your advantage today. And as always, we are recording our workshop today, so you have a chance to tune in afterwards on our YouTube channel. But before we get into the workshop, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, L.E.A.D, who will read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We hope you're having a good day and you're able to get a lot out of the workshop. So I'm going to get started with the land acknowledgement. As treaties people on Turtle Island, we are obligated to uphold treaties made from a long time ago. Where I am situated, I would like to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. I also want to thank the First Peoples for their ongoing teaching of how we are to learn on the land and from the land in partnership with each other, the animals, and the plants.
Thank you, L.E.A.D, for the land acknowledgement. And our agenda for today is you'll learn about the L.E.A.D org. If it's your first time with us, we welcome you. We'll cover the ground rules, introduce Tara, who will lead us through the main event. We also have a feedback form towards the end, so please stick around because we do really value your feedback, and we'll let you know about upcoming events we're hosting. And if you didn't catch it, I'm Valerie. I'm a career development practitioner and a program coordinator at this amazing organization called the L.E.A.D org. I've had many years experience working in nonprofit, mainly with youth, aged 18 to 29 and above, helping them with their career confidence and honing and owning their strengths. And we're really happy again to have Tara here. Tara and I actually met years ago when I was a younger youth. And she was also a very instrumental person with my growth. So happy to have her here again today. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague L.E.A.D. Maybe you can give us a quick little introduction about yourself and also tell everyone about our amazing organization, L.E.A.D org.
Thank you, Valerie. So similar to Valerie, I also work as the program coordinator here at the Canadian Multicultural L.E.A.D organization for mentoring and training. We just shortened it by going with the L.E.A.D org. So yeah, like a little bit about me is I'm a recent graduate and I do a lot of work with the community as well as just in the medical community as well. And a little bit about us is we are a charitable nonprofit, and our goal really is to provide mentoring and training for adults and youth. And we do this by hosting lots of workshops, programs, seminars, conferences. And the goal really is to support everyone, right? So we want you to create your own success story using the strategies and tools that we provide you. And this workshop is an example of what we do in the community.
Excellent. Thank you so much, L.E.A.D, for introducing everyone to our amazing org. So if it's your first time, welcome. Glad to have you here. So a couple of ground rules before we begin our workshop today are as follows. Be respectful, be open, be helpful, be authentic, be present, and take action. At the L.E.A.D org, we strive to create a safe environment where our participants we'll have the opportunity to engage with the speakers, ourselves, and each other so that you can learn and grow and create those success stories that you so deserve. And as mentioned, this will be an interactive event. Later on, we will have breakout rooms where Tara will lead us in creating our own strength statements. So please take action. This is an amazing opportunity for you to really hone those strengths and move forward it in the direction of your dream careers. All right, so it is my pleasure and honor to introduce the amazing Tara Rhodes. As I mentioned, Tara has been someone who I have known for many years now. I met her in my early 20s. She's the first life coach I met, and we just kept in touch over time. And we were able to cross paths again by collaborating at the L.E.A.D org. So Tara Rhodes is a certified life and leadership coach, speaker, and award-winning facilitator and trainer. She is dedicated to helping people gain the clarity and confidence to advocate for the life they want to live, and then develop healthy habits to make that a reality. She firmly believes that life is too short to live a life that makes you unhappy, and is on a mission to help her clients take control of their lives so they can share their unique gifts with the world. So her and I align very similarly with that mission. A wife and mom to two lively boys, she actively practices what she preaches to maintain a healthy balance and presence in her everyday. So you can find out more about Tara at her websites at tararhodes.com. Welcome, Tara. We're so happy to have you here.
I am happy to be here. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You may or may not have met me before or seen me on somewhere, but if you have not, this is not a webinar. I will not be talking for 60 minutes. This is an opportunity for you to dive in. So I want you to know that first off. This is also an opportunity for you to help those who are here, because one of the beautiful things about developing yourself is that the best way to do it is in community. So I hope that you will be using this time to kind of dive in, figure out a little bit about yourself, and help someone else along that journey as well. All right, okay, so here you heard, I believe that life is too short for work to suck, basically. And we have a lot of power now. It's shifted a lot since the advent of all of this technology that we're a part of, that we can find out more about the employers that we have. Before we go on interviews, we can find these value statements on organizations' websites. We can, interview other people because it's really easy to connect with others. So it's really, really great. And there's also a lot of things that have not changed. We're still asking the same questions in interviews. We're still kind of going into, tell us about your weaknesses, which really isn't helpful. And so this is a fairly new thing, and new in terms of just like being accepted. Like the strengths movement has been happening for a while, but I think there's a lot more like an embrace around strengths. And especially after the last 2 years, I think it's starting to shift where people are not willing to put up with organizations that don't value their unique strengths and the gifts that they bring. And so this is a really great time because we have a lot of leverage. And so what I want to help you do today is articulate a little bit, because obviously this is an ongoing practice, but I want you to articulate a little bit about some of the strengths that you bring. And then you'll have some more work to do, because this work doesn't end. I have been doing this work for, I can't even tell you how long, at least a decade, and I'm still discovering things about myself. So I hope that you will bring this mindset around there's still work to do, there will always be work to do, but at the very start will help get you started on articulating your strengths. So I want you to shine in who you are. I want you to own it. Hopefully by the end of the session, if you don't already, you will say, yes, Tara gave me permission to own who I am, and that would be a win for me. So that's really great. Today, the way that we'll look is I'm going to do a check-in, which I'll explain in a second, just to ground us in what we're doing today. We're going to talk about strengths. We're going to talk about what they are and why they're important. Then we're going to help you. You're actually going to have a chance to start writing it down yourself for some self-reflection before we go into breakouts. And I'll explain all of that as we go in. Then we're going to come back and debrief after you talk about your strengths and what you're discovering during this process. And then we'll just talk a little bit about how this can apply in interviews and at work. And if you have any questions, we'll make time for that at the end as well. Okay, does anybody have any questions? If not, I'd love to see a thumbs up or like, yes, Tara, we are here in the chat. That would be really great to know what's going on. Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. Awesome. Yay, Galaxy S9. I'm gonna assume that's your name. EJ, I hope I got that right. Thank you very much. Okay, so as mentioned, if you have a pen, paper, notes app, whatever, it doesn't matter as long as you're capturing notes somewhere, that'll be great. So whatever works for you. As interactive, so if you feel free to put your questions in the chat, if we don't get to them right away, we'll make sure that we get to them as much as we can, and I'll share as many resources as I can if that's helpful. Would love to see some of your faces if we can at some point. That would be awesome. And that's about it, as other than following the ground rules that Valerie so eloquently put together. Okay, so I'm going to start us off with a quote so you can kind of understand a little bit where I'm coming from, and then I'll put up my slides so you can see and what we're doing today. All right, make sure I read this. It's a little long, but it comes from a really great book called Go Put Your Strengths to Work. Okay. Back when you were young, your strengths were to be trusted. You might not have had a name for them. You might not have even labeled them strengths. But when you were a child, you listened to them. Then somehow, sometime between then and now, your childhood clarity faded and you started listening to the world around you more closely than you did to yourself. You had to get into college, find a job, and with that job came the urgent demands of customers, colleagues, and bosses. The truth you now face is that these people aren't very concerned with your strengths. They're much more interested in what you can get done for them. But so what? Faced with the world's indifference, you've got two options. Either resign yourself to a life in which your strengths are largely irrelevant, or instead, learn how to make them relevant. Learn how to put them to work. It's your choice. And as I mentioned, that comes from Go Put Your Strengths to Work by Marcus Buckingham. He is heavily aligned with the Gallup organization, which has spearheaded their research on strengths. I highly recommend their website anytime you want to dive in. There's really great resources there, and they have a really great strengths finder test. If you buy their book, one of their books, usually a test comes with it. If your organization wants to pay for it, some of them do as well, but I highly recommend the resources that they have. They are fabulous. Okay, let me share my screen so we can get on the same page here. Okay. Everyone good? Let's see. All right. So this is part of the mindset that we've got to face right now. Is whether or not we're going to invest in the people that we actually are. And so discovering and using your strengths is about owning what makes you great, as I mentioned, and what makes you great is more of what we need, because as I'm sure a lot of you can see, diversity is one of those topics that is very, very important right now, should be important always. But we need that. We need diversity of thought. We need diversity of experiences. We need all of those things. So it's important that the way that you see the world is brought to work. So let me start with a check-in here. I'd love to know in the chat or out loud, whatever you feel most comfortable with, what brought you here today? What do you want to know? What about this topic is important for you specifically? Anyone want to share? What is it about strengths that you are trying to figure out? How to identify your strengths? Yeah. Strengths in my current job to transfer to other jobs. Yes, transferable skills. Perfect. Anything else out there? Oh, yes. Heading into a job search, and I feel I don't know myself well enough to target opportunities that would make me happy and where I can shine. Thank you, Annette. And how to articulate my strengths well. Perfect. So we are going to cover this. We want you to find out more about who you are and how to articulate it. So here's the second question. Can you name a strength or one that you think is a strength? that you already have. And thank you, Elizabeth. Learn how to demonstrate them without looking like a show off. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit too. I would say it's other people's discomfort if they think it's a show off, if they think you're a show off, but we'll talk about it. So my second question, name a strength you think you have, and we'll see as we go through the presentation whether or not it fits the definition. Enthusiasm. Looking for faster, more efficient ways to doing the same job. Process. Love it. Empathic listening. Of course, Valerie. An organizer. Yes. Thank you all for sharing. Keep them coming. Incredible analytical skills. Analytical skills, good. Yes, leadership. And of course, you should have more than one. We're not all just put into one strengths box. So that's really good. Thank you for sharing. Organizing. Yes. Okay. So this is just getting a sense of who you are, and being able to say it out loud is always helpful when we're in a group. Team player, being personable. Great. Keep them coming. Okay. So let's keep moving. First part is, have you ever noticed that when you ask people to describe their weaknesses, they somehow manage to spin the description around so the weaknesses sound suspiciously like strengths? So for example, my weakness is that I care too much, or I'm too much of a perfectionist, or my standards are just too high for my own good. In an interview, have you ever heard anybody just say, I struggle with implementing my plans once I've designed them, or you know what, I'm weak at thinking strategically? No, you really wouldn't hear that, because interviews are kind of a weird thing where we're trying to just showcase our best selves. And we're so inarticulate of being able to say what our strengths are. Our strengths are the very qualities that make us look our best. And yet when we ask to detail them, we lack detail, basically. So your strengths, to be clear, I teach in tech organizations, and this is some topic that is very dear to my heart. When we are talking about strengths in the Gallup way of defining them, it's about energy, and it's about our actual activities. So a lot of your answers in the chat, they're really great starts, but they're only one aspect of what actually makes our strengths. So they're defined by our actual activities. Let me keep going here. The best, and ideally the only person best qualified to identify them is you. So I'm going to explain a little bit more of what that means. Basically, our strengths should be something that energizes us and are made of three elements. So talents, these are the innate elements you are born with and stay with you. So if you think of the strengths test, or if you think of a personality test, or any of those, although completely not fully scientific, what they note over lots of years of research is that a lot of things stay with us since the day that we're born. We don't change much when it comes to these types of things. So those are things that can't necessarily be learned, that are innate to you. And then you have the other two elements, which are skills and knowledge. Both of those can be learned. Skills, you're kind of thinking about the steps involved in activities. And then knowledge is the information you pick up along the way that supports the skills. So these are things that can be learned. These are things that you learn on a regular basis, and most likely can be taught as well. When you put these three ingredients together, you can figure out your strengths. So your strengths are activities that make you feel strong. So to capture the specific activities that constitute your strengths, you're going to have to go beyond generic talent labels and pinpoint your actual activities in a regular week and how they make you feel. So here's an example of me. My name is Tara. Hello. I'm a learner. So one of the talents, I have a lot of talents, but one of the talents that I do have after a lot of tests and a lot of searching is that I'm a learner. I love to learn. When other people really just want to veg out on the couch, I get lots and lots of joy out of picking up a really good book, generally nonfiction. I love learning, like go put your strengths to work, things like that. So that's really important. I always strive for better. Second, my skills over lots of years of work, all of that. Basically, client services and coaching are two of the ones that I use on a daily basis. Facilitations in there as well. And then my knowledge spans pretty wide because, as I said, I'm a learner. But for the specific example, I've taken in a lot about process, leadership development, and facilitation. So those are the things that I read on a regular basis. So the unique intersection of being a learner, being someone who's really good at client services and coaching, and knowing a lot about facilitation, leadership development, etc. This makes me exceptional at effortlessly balancing the needs of the client, organization, and my team, which means I'm a human-centered leader. And that is where my intersection is amazing. That is a strength of mine. It comes really easily to me. And after a call where I talk someone through a process, makes it really simple in a way that's human-centered, I do never feel drained. I feel super excited. So that is it in a nutshell. And I'm just going to open the chat so I make sure I'm not missing anything. People tired. Yes. So that's good. So that's kind of strengths in a nutshell. It's not just the thing that comes out of a test. It is all of these things put together and how they intersect. And we're talking about activities. So of course, this is not something that I came up with in 5 minutes. This has taken years to get to and in a way to articulate it, but this is where we're going to start. So the 3 steps to figuring this out, basically, and let me just check out the chat. Okay, thank you. The way to figure this out, 3 steps. 1, we want to capture. So this is where we're going to start today, where we're going to capture the specific activities over the course of a week where you play to your strengths and which ones play to your weaknesses. Actually, I say that you should do it longer, but let's start with a week. 2, we're going to clarify the specific activities you've captured and arrived at into statements that are both precise enough to preserve the original emotion and general enough for you to apply each week, which I'll talk about in a second, and then confirm. So confirm that these are your most dominant strengths. The reason that we want to go over a week or even longer is because weeks are sometimes weird, where we're doing things that aren't in our normal wheelhouse, I guess you could say. And so we want to spend time really figuring out what are those things. So the best way to go about this is to capture them. So what I would like you to do, actually, I'm going to exit this for a second. All right. So I hope that is clear that basically it's going to take some work for you to figure this out. And I actually want to do this for you. So I want to give you a few minutes and I want you to think about, let's just say the last 48 hours. And I want you to think about basically what were the things that you did. Like just, they don't have to be in depth, but just think about, okay, got up, had breakfast, walked the dog, you know, had a client call, whatever, like thing. And just kind of like really quickly jot down. If 48 hours is too long, just think about today or think about yesterday. It's just to get you in the practice of thinking about that. So I'll give you a few minutes just to jot down what that looks like. And then we'll set it up so that you're going to go a little bit deeper into what I was talking about. Does anybody have any questions before we dive in, or is anything unclear? Okay, let's give you 3 minutes. I know it's short, but 3 minutes just to kind of like jot down some of those activities that you were doing. No judgment on the activities yet, just write them down. Okay, so welcome, come back. Would love to know if there's any ahas that are showing up just by doing that exercise. Feel free to put them in the chat. And we will keep moving as it goes. So this is how we start. We start with an inventory. If you're doing this with intention, you actually want to do this as you're going. So you don't want to be looking backwards. You want to be, okay, I'm currently in a session with Tara and I'm learning about this and I'm listening passively. Like that is what you want to be writing, right? And you're going through the day. So it's not like, oh, how was that? What was I doing? Right? Like you want to be doing it in action as it moves. So I would actually say, if you want to figure this out, I would commit to the next week or two and do this on a regular basis and start to write down the activities that you are doing on a regular basis. Okay. So this is all a really good start, and you're moving on. We want to take it one step further, and I'm going to share my screen again so you can see what I'm about to talk about. We're talking about the 4 signs of a strength. So one is just, these are the activities. Now it's thinking about, what do these activities mean? So sign, SIGN, success, instinct, growth, and needs. So first, success. When you do it, you feel effective. So you're not failing at this thing that you are doing. Your self-efficacy is really high. 2, the instinct. Before you do it, you actively look forward to it. That is a really good sign that you're in strength zone. 3, growth. While you're doing it, you feel inquisitive and focused. So you're curious about what you're doing. You're thinking about how you can make this better. This is really great. This is really fun. Ooh, I'm really curious about why this is like this. That is really good energy for when you're thinking about strengths. And then finally, N, needs. After you've done it, you feel fulfilled and authentic. So this is where we're pointing to energy in all of these areas. None of these should ever feel draining. These are the types of things that you know that you're in the strength zone. So you want to pay close attention to how specific activities make you feel. And we are talking about feelings here, right? It's not just, oh, that was boring, but it's also, oh, my stomach is in knots. That was not fun. Which could be different from excitement too, but you have to figure that out for yourself. Your feelings will reveal your strengths, and your strengths make you feel strong. And that is the indicator that you're in the strength zone. So I want you to take a look at the list that you just made, long or not. And I basically want you to start to identify how it made you feel. Where basically option 1 is strong, excited, powerful, confident, authentic. And option 2 is like drained, time is going slowly, I'm bored, I'm frustrated, I'm irritated. So you can like put a plus or minus or a sun in a cloud or however you want to do that, and just kind of go through really quickly and just identify those activities. When you think about them, how did it make you feel? So I'll just give you a minute or 2 for that one. And then we're actually going to go in and talk about this in our breakout rooms. Keep it going, keep it going. Okay. So again, this is just a taste. Again, if you're doing this on and you've committed to it, these are the types of things you want to be ideally in the moment feeling and being like, oh, I really wasn't looking forward to this. You want to have the before, during, and after. Like those types of things will be really helpful. Okay, so that's the beginning. And what I want you to do now is we're going to go into breakouts. And since there are, 4 of you, we'll have 2 breakout rooms of 2. You're going to go into pairs. I think we'll just do 10 minutes, Olamide. And basically, you want to spend 10 minutes discussing with your partner. If you want to do 5 and 5, or you just want to have a free-flowing discussion, that's completely up to you. I want you to talk about what that experience was like. And what you are aware of now, is what you're discovering close to what you thought, or is it completely opening up something else? And if you want, you can talk about actually, okay, well, this is what I think is a strength. What do you think? Like you can actually talk to your partner about that. So I want you to use these 10 minutes to whatever is going to be helpful for you to take a next step in discovering what this is. And when we come back, I want to hear some of your ahas, and then we'll dive into, okay, well, how do we apply this? Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Have fun. Oh, somebody dropped. Okay. Do you generally stop recording at this point? Hi, Annette. Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope that was illuminating. I hope that you had an aha of some type or even a small one. Love to hear. Who's got something to share? What are you aware of now after that conversation? Be out loud or in the chat, whatever works. Anybody?
Hi, it's Elizabeth. I
Hi.
think Debbie and I had a really good conversation about what we've both been doing over the last couple of days. And Debbie, do you want to speak for yourself, or do you want me to say something? I mean, I did find it useful listing down what I'd have done over a typical couple of days, and then identifying a strength. You know, it's getting focused enough to put the word, because you do find it awkward in interviews if, unless you know, obviously you are prepared to a certain extent to sort of list those 4 words that would identify your strengths, but it's actually getting to sit. So if you had to give an example, you know, we've just gone through writing down what you've done over the last 3 or 4 days and identified a strengths word. So I can give an example or two. They're all ready, primed, ready to go. And Debbie, do you want to come on or not? Because Debbie she came to the rescue at a particular event where she was a guest at the event and ended up being the mediator, the organizer, getting people to be diffusing anger within the situation.
Wow.
And she was just like totally took control. She was, you know, the leadership skills and the organizational skills and getting people to be team players. And I mean, it's like she was only the guest of a friend to attend this particular event, so she was turned into a stellar performer. And I think they all took her mobile number for whenever anybody was holding a future event, and they could invite her along.
Love that story. I love it. And those are the things we should be paying attention to. And thank you for sharing. Yes, we want to use our experience and figure out those activities. And what L.E.A.D and I were talking about during the breakout was like, there's layers to this, because it might be that you love mediating, I don't know, relationship advice, something like that. But when you're in the workplace, you can't stand it. You want to pay attention to the exact activity, what was present, who was there, what was going on. So there's layers, which is why I say this takes a long time. But you can start to uncover, oh, I'm really good at mediating. My empathetic nature plus what I know about mediation, like, etc., brings a unique quality to me. And then you can start to unpeel the layers as to what specifically is really great. So for example, I love leading teams. I cannot stand group work though. Like, I cannot stand it. So love working with people in certain contexts. That will be really great. But in school, that has always been the bane of my existence. So you want to find out specifically what those things are and pay attention to the energy that is being brought. So strengths are a really good indicator and a way to help manage your energy. It's not to say we can be perfect or have 100% high energy all the time, but you do want to minimize the times where you feel drained.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute when I was trying to talk. And I'm like, what's wrong?
That's okay. Go ahead, Debbie.
Thank you. So what she was saying, yeah, if I want to chip in, I'm like, yeah, okay, ha. And then, yeah, it did. Obviously, it wasn't working because I was on mute. So yeah, I think something that Elizabeth had pointed out, just with regards to identifying, you know, when you talk about a situation out loud, you start identifying, oh, I guess that was a strength too. Oh, I guess that was a strength too. So you know, talking about those things with somebody and identifying specifics, I think helps identify different strengths that you bring that you may not realize is a strength per se, but when you look back, oh yeah, that's a strength. Nobody else was doing that, right? So yeah.
100%. And
Yeah.
that's why I highly recommend you do this with people.
Yeah.
Because writing things down for some reason just isn't as clarifying as if you say it out loud and have somebody say, oh, especially somebody who you know well and that you trust, like, this is really great. But if you have somebody who knows you and is like, oh, actually, I've seen that before, that's a really good insight, etc. Or no, what about this example? So that would be really helpful too. Sounds like you found your calling, Debbie.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything to share before we move on?
I had a very interesting conversation with Valerie. So I was before this, I ended up in a position in a really large company, and they were not leveraging my strengths like most of the time. Sometimes I'd find a manager who would figure out, oh, you know, she's really good at this, and then I'd get into a really interesting project. But like, all told, there were so many people, and the leaders were not, you know, particularly interested in the people aspect. And so, but it was really, it ended up just really being hard. Like, I felt lost because I was doing these things that weren't, you know, really either gratifying, or they weren't giving me satisfaction. And it took me a while to realize it was because my strengths weren't being leveraged. I was just like, why do I hate this job so much? And that's why and the way you talked about it, the strengths, like the three aspects with the talents and the skills and the knowledge, I'd never seen it that way before. And this like just opens up a whole new world for me right now. So I'm excited.
Amazing. Love that. Yes. That's why I highly recommend Gallup and anything they do, because it's not just I'm empathetic. That really doesn't do much for you. It's like, how do we interact with all the other things? So that's really great. I'm glad it's opened up something. That's amazing. Valerie, did you get anything out of that breakout? Curious what you're taking away.
Sure, I can share. It was really great connecting with Annette and listening to her talk about her experience. You know, when you're in the situation, like a job where your skills and talents and strengths are not being utilized, it can really make you feel like, what am I doing here, right? And sometimes it's hard to relabel when you're in the jar. So it helps, like, having others around you who see those strengths in you, tell you what it is. And we also discuss, oftentimes these strengths come so naturally to us that we don't even realize that there are strengths until other people point it out, like, hey, you're really good at this. We often overlook it because it does come natural to us, that it doesn't seem like it's much, but it really is. And I think we've also been conditioned to think like things have to be challenging or difficult. So we overlook what comes easily to us, but it's what comes easily and naturally, and just has everything going for us. Everything. So let me rephrase that. And I think, Tara, you'll be familiar with this concept about being in the state of flow. When we're doing what comes so naturally and easily for us, and it energizes us, you know, that's when we get into that state of flow. So I think that's really important to consider what gives us energy, what drains us, and think about our strengths from that energetic place.
100%. Thank you for sharing. That's really great insight and so important. So that's basically where you would start. This is a really great process to undertake, where you want to capture, then you want to figure out, does it fit? Like, is this true? Can I put this into a statement? Basically, what you want to think about is, I felt strong when. I felt strong when, right? Identify energy. I felt strong when, and try to have like really clear statements. Highly recommend that book, Go Put Your Strengths to Work. It's a really great one if you want to kind of go through the process, and they have a lot of worksheets that you can work through as well. And then you want to confirm, is this actually true? And then you'll have a statement that you can go and actually put out there, right? I am the person that if we are doing X, this is what you can count on me for. Right. And so to answer some of the questions or the statements that were in before, is basically you want to be able to speak about yourself and be unapologetic about it, because there is a really unique intersection that you bring whether or not it's in an interview or even just at work or in your relationships at home, right? There's a very unique way that you view the world, and it's valuable. And so part of being able to do this without looking like a show off, Elizabeth, is that first you've got to shift your mindset into believing like this is just talking about who you are. Because otherwise it will be feeling like you're not being humble or, right, this is the time to brag, right? And I know this sometimes feels a little uncomfortable, especially if it's something that you haven't done before, but it's like, this is who I am. So earlier in my career, I was really like, I followed the crowd basically, right? Like I was very outspoken, but people were like, Tara, you're being too loud. Tara, you're being too loud. Tara, you're being too loud. Because I was just very outspoken about what I saw and the things that I agreed with and the things that I didn't. Now, part of that is tact. So fully like take that one as just being young and loud. But what I learned is that because I strive always to be better because of my learner mindset, that is not a bad thing. People who are threatened by it are like threatened by change. And so I need to be in an organization where my perspective is valued. So generally, I need to be in smaller organizations that value a lot of voices. I do not do well in corporations. And then I'm on teams that value this type of thinking. So when you are in interviews, as much as you want to be able to answer with, these are my strengths, I'm sure you've heard of the STAR method. You want to have these like interview methods ready where you can talk to examples. This is what it is. This is the example of when I did it. This is what I learned, etc. Those are the things you want to do. But then you also want to interview the people there. What is your leadership style? How do you lead? How do you bring people to their strengths? How do you identify where people are strongest? Where do you put them in the organization? There is you basically, and Gallup like supports this. People leave managers. They generally don't leave companies. And what I read today, which actually resonates a lot more with me, is people leave toxic environments. Right. And so, like you said, Annette, it's that you just don't even know where you're strong, that somebody's not leading you and you didn't even know, rather than somebody taking you under your wing. So you want to find those organizations and you want to ask the questions like, what is your leadership style? Really great question, right?
And also I don't know, I kind of felt lost, but I hate blaming other people.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I don't know, maybe it's like a woman thing, but like I always like, what's wrong with me that I hate this job?
Yeah.
And yeah.
So I'd say that in a gendered way, women do feel this on a more regular basis. They say it's imposter syndrome. For the record, imposter syndrome is not, it's a thing, but it's not a woman's problem. Let's just say that. We all have areas that we feel weak, but we've been nurtured to say that it's all of our faults. And what we've learned is that especially in interviews, that like we have to put our best foot forward, and it's real like I have to solve it. And that is old and like archaic advice, to be quite honest. You want people who are vulnerable. You want people who are like, I didn't know, but how do I do this better? And that is how organizations are moving forward. So you want to feel empowered, because if you settle now, it's not going to work out for you. It's actually going to go worse, and most likely you're capping your income as well if you make these types of decisions over time. Right. And so you want to be forward with the types of organizations that you're moving with and that are going to support your growth as much as you're going to support theirs. So
that was a huge mistake on my part. You just
you
nailed it. I mean, right.
They don't teach you this stuff. So not a mistake, a learning experience. Hopefully it wasn't too long, a learning experience, but you're empowered to go make the right decisions moving forward. And that's what we're looking for. So my hope, because I want to make sure that you can all leave if you need to have somewhere to go, is that you will take the time to find out about yourself, that you will take the time to actually interview the people that are going to be in charge of your career. Your direct manager is going to be in charge of your career. And so it's one thing to get a really great company on your resume, but it's quite another to be happy at it. So you want to make sure that as much as you can lean into your strengths, as much as they can light up, give you that like really big boost of energy, that's where you want to be. Thank you for your time. I know they have a survey they want to put out as well, feedback. So I'll let you do that. And if you have questions, feel free to put it in the chat, and I'll be around for a little bit. So if you want to ask something, I am here. Pass it back to Valerie.
Thank you so much, Tara, for taking us through this process of learning to really hone our strengths. I concur with Annette. I never thought about talking about my strengths in that way. I really like the template that you showed us, and it's not enough to say, oh, I'm empathetic. You have to give specific situations. And I think with the template you give us, I think we're all capable of being able to articulate our strengths so much better when it comes to interviews and as we develop our careers. Thank you again, Tara. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a QR code on there for our survey. And Olamity's also shared the link in the chat, so you can also grab it from there. And go. Or you can grab it from the QR screen, or the QR code from the screen. So we'll give everyone just a moment to fill it in. We really appreciate your feedback as a small org. I know this was a very chock-full presentation, but Tara is available to keep in touch with, as well as Olamide and I at the L.E.A.D org. We can definitely do more of these in the future, maybe a little bit longer. That way you could continue to develop your strengths and other aspects of your career. Just I'll give everybody a moment to fill out their survey. Thanks in advance for completing it.
Look next time at pump up music.
That'd be great. Okay, another minute, and then love to tell you about the upcoming events. All right, so if you're still filling out the survey, please do so. But before I get into upcoming events, I'd love to hear from everybody what your number one takeaway from the workshop was today. So we got a couple of shares right after the breakout room from Annette, and I think it was Debbie and Elizabeth. We'd love to hear from Brian, EJ, Olamide as well. What number one thing you learned from today about your strengths you're taking away? Maybe if you even discovered a strength you didn't realize that you had, feel free to share it. Oh, great. Thank you for sharing, Brian. That is a really good and deep realization. Brian shares that he realized he does have some form of imposter syndrome and that he needs to let go of this in order to be stronger moving forward with his career path. Thank you, Brian, for sharing with authenticity and vulnerability. Oftentimes, many of us don't realize that we have this imposter syndrome, and yes, it can stop you from moving forward. So it's amazing that you've recognized it. So Love your amazing encouragement, Tara, in the chat. Remember, you are a wonderful gift. What you have to share is worth it.
I'd also just like to say, just because imposter syndrome has come up, we are in systems that encourage us to make us feel like we are not good enough. So there's a lot of conditioning that has happened. So for those of you who are realizing that this is something that may have a hold on you, part of it, yes, is you, but most of it isn't. So just know that organizations, the way that people lead, all of that, there's a lot of people doing bad things in organizations that are leading badly that make you feel like you are not doing a good job or you're not enough. And so I would say, yes, continue on the journey of overcoming that voice, and also know that it's not just you.
Thank you so much for pointing out that important distinction, Tara, and that oftentimes it's the environment that we're in and our upbringing culturally, systemically as well, that conditions us to believe that we are not enough when we actually are, which is why I love having these types of workshops that show us that we do have these strengths and skills and talents. That's a way of us taking back our power and affirming to ourselves that no, we're not imposters. We do have wonderful gifts and talents. Oh, awesome. I agree with Debbie. It was very interesting information. It encourages us how to change our thinking of ourselves. I think that's where it all begins, changing the way that we think of ourselves. Anything else you'd like to share, Debbie?
No, I enjoyed it. It wasn't something I was, I came across the topic, and I thought, well, that sort of sounds interesting, and I decided to join the call, and it was surprising, thinking I hadn't thought of things certain ways sometimes. I think Tara had sort of said, you take your strength that you think you have, and and you reverse it when you're in an interview, right? So instead of doing that, I think it's focusing more on your strengths as opposed to trying to think of it in a different way. I just thought it was good information. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Great. So glad to hear you enjoyed it, Debbie. And actually, this event was actually partially inspired by a post that I saw Tara make on LinkedIn not so long ago, where she had this list about that kind of juxtaposed the strengths and weaknesses. Like instead of saying, "Oh, I care too much," no, it shows that you're a very caring person, and it's not a weakness; it's actually a strength. So I love the way that she juxtaposed those things, because oftentimes we do focus. I find organizations, whenever you have like performance reviews, oftentimes it is, okay, let's focus on your weakness, how you're improving, la di da, and really shining the microscope on that, rather than looking at all the other amazing things that you're bringing. So also no wonder why we kind of get down that imposter syndrome rabbit hole. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts. We hope that you all will continue the activities that Tara gave, observe yourself over the next week, so that you can continue to build your strengths. And of course, Tara and ourselves at the L.E.A.D org are available to be in touch with you. And I'm curious to see, what you come up with over the week. All right, so upcoming events at the L.E.A.D org. We have an event coming up next week on May 26th from 6 to 7 p.m. We are collaborating once again with the amazing folks at the Credit Counseling Society, where we are going to learn investment basics, how to make the most of your money. So the folks at CCS are really wonderful. I found that as someone who's not the most financially literate person, and again, that comes from our education system hasn't really been particularly set up for us to become really empowered with our money. I found that the workshops with CCS were very easy to understand, even for a beginner. So we hope that you will also join us for that workshop. It's totally free. And thank you, L.E.A.D, for sharing the link in the chat. Hope you all attend again. All right, and I'm going to pass it over to L.E.A.D to talk about how you can keep in touch with the L.E.A.D org.
Yeah, so thank you all once again for joining us. So please stay in touch with us with our social media accounts. So on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So on YouTube, we have the recordings of our past workshops. So for example, the workshop that we just had right now with Tara will be uploaded on our channel for you to go back to watch and just to re-educate yourself and to go back to relearn. So keep in touch with us. We have a lot of updates on our social media accounts as well. And I'm sure most of you are on our mailing list. So all our events will be updated on our social media and our mailing list.